She was wearing the red dress. Not just any red dress. The one she told me made her feel dangerous. The moment I stepped inside, I saw her. She didn't see me. She was laughing, shoulders relaxed, head tilted slightly back, fingertips grazing the rim of a glass she used to only order on anniversaries. He was already sitting too close. His body language screamed entitlement, and hers wasn't resisting. I stood just inside the doorway, between the coat rack and a family photo from 1987 nailed to the wall, and felt my entire chest collapse in on itself. It was like the room had a vacuum, and I was the only one being pulled inward. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She always does that when she's flirting. I used to think it was innocent. Habit. Nervous energy. Now I knew better. I didn't walk to her. I floated. Each step was syrup. Every sound in the room muffled like I was underwater. When I reached the table, she still hadn't noticed. It was him who turned first. Confused. Then tense. Then smug. Only when I pulled the ring from my finger, slow, deliberate, did she finally look up. Her face cracked. Just slightly. Her smile twitched and fell. Her hand hovered above the table like it wasn't sure whether to defend or deny. I placed the ring in front of her. Gently. Like it was fragile. Like we had been. Still, she said nothing. Not wait. Not please. Not even my name. I turned. I walked out. And the second the door closed behind me, the night screamed louder than she ever did. The air outside hit me like a slap. Sharp. Unfiltered. Real. I didn't know where to go, so I just walked. Not fast. Not slow. Just enough to keep moving. Like if I stopped, the weight of what happened would finally crush me. My hands were numb. Not from the cold. From her. From watching the exact moment someone stops loving you. A block down, I passed an alleyway we used to sneak through to catch the midnight bus back, when we had no car and no money. I could still remember her heels clicking against the pavement, her laughter echoing off the brick walls as she pulled me by the wrist, drunk on cheap wine and the idea that life was still unfolding. I stopped there for a moment. That narrow strip of memory. And I leaned against the wall like it might give me answers. But it was just stone, cold and silent. That's when it hit me. I didn't exist to her anymore. Not as a man. Not as a husband. Not even as a person worth explaining anything to. She didn't ask why I came. She didn't defend herself. She didn't cry or whisper, "I'm sorry." She just stared at the ring like it was a receipt for something she regretted buying. And me? I wanted her to run after me. Not to fix things, God no. But just to care. To pretend I mattered enough for a single step in my direction. But that booth might as well have been a throne. And she? A queen who had already chosen her next night. I pulled out my phone. Notifications blinked like static. One from my manager. One from my mother. None from her. She didn't even text to say what was that. Or come back. Or we need to talk. It was silence. The same silence I'd been choking on for months. Only now it was no longer quiet. It was final. I wandered down to the pier. Empty. Wind slicing across the water like glass. I sat at the edge and watched the reflections ripple under the street lamps. I thought about throwing the phone into the river. Then myself. But I didn't do either. I just sat there and tried to remember the last time she held my hand without pulling away first. And I couldn't. I don't know how long I sat by the water. At some point, the streetlight above me flickered once and went out completely, like even it couldn't stand to witness the humiliation any longer. I stayed. Not because I had nowhere else to be, but because nowhere felt safer than home. Eventually, I stood up and forced my legs to take me somewhere, anywhere. My keys felt like lead in my pocket. I didn't even want to touch them, because that meant going back to the apartment. Back to the bed we still shared, the one I paid for, with sheets she no longer touched me under. The same walls that had heard our laughter, our arguments, and then, nothing at all. I walked slowly back, thinking about everything and nothing. About how you can live beside someone and still have no idea they're packing bags inside their heart months before they physically leave. The thought made my throat tighten. When I opened the door to our place, it was dark. She wasn't home yet. Probably still with him. Maybe laughing at how neatly I had placed the ring on the table like some tragic soap opera character. Maybe he was asking her if she was okay, and she was lying with practiced ease. I switched on the hallway light and just stood there. Her shoes were gone. Her coat was gone. The scent of her still hung in the air, but it already felt like it belonged to the past. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt right. like walking into a museum exhibit of your own life. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally picked up my phone again. Still no text. Out of spite, or maybe masochism, I opened our message thread. It was still pinned at the top. I scrolled back, wondering when she stopped sounding like her. And then I realized something that hit me harder than anything that night. There were more blue bubbles than gray ones. I was talking to myself for weeks, maybe longer. She'd stopped responding long before she stopped replying. I checked her location. Gone. She had turned it off. Not just now. 3 days ago. 3 days. She had already deleted me. Not just emotionally. Not just physically. But digitally. Casually. Like I was an app that drained her battery too fast. I wanted to scream. Or cry. Or sleep for 6 days straight. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, pulled out the glass she always used for wine, and filled it with water. I drank it slowly, imagining it was something stronger. Something capable of numbing this precise moment where the truth finally became undeniable. She wasn't mine anymore. And I was the last to know. I stayed up all night. I didn't plan to. I just couldn't find a reason to sleep in a bed that still smelled like her shampoo. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face at the bar. Not the way she looked at me, but the way she looked at him. That open smile. That light in her eyes. The kind of look I thought only I had ever earned. By 4:17 a.m., I'd moved from the couch to the kitchen floor. I don't know why. Maybe because it felt neutral. Cold tile under my legs. The hum of the fridge filling the silence that had swallowed everything else. At 6:03, I finally stood up and opened our bedroom closet. I already knew what I'd find, but it still knocked the wind out of me. Half empty. Her side, hangers missing, the hooks on the inside of the door bare. The shoebox with old cards we'd written each other? Gone. The perfume bottle with barely any left? Gone. Even the scarf I bought her in Portland when we still believed in forever wasn't there. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the sticky note. One single square of yellow paper, stuck to the mirror inside the closet. It said, "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." That was it. Not "I'm sorry." Not "let's talk." Not "you deserve better." Just that. Cold. Convenient. Cowardly. I read it 3 times. And then again. I wanted it to change each time I looked. Like somehow I'd misread it in my haze. That maybe it said "call me," or "this isn't goodbye." But no. It was exactly what it looked like. A premeditated exit. She hadn't just walked out of our marriage. She planned it. I staggered backward, nearly tripping over the laundry basket I hadn't touched in days. My legs gave out near the foot of the bed, and I sat there, chest burning, mind racing, hands shaking as I tried to connect the dots. How long? When did she start packing in her mind? Was he always the plan B, or did I become plan Z? A sound broke the silence. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. My heart jumped. Hope is cruel like that. I reached for it too fast, almost dropping it. It was a notification. From our shared calendar. Anniversary dinner. Tonight, 7:30 p.m., Felix's Bistro. We had a reservation. She had booked it. It was still there. The calendar hadn't caught up to the real story yet. And that made 2 of us. I stared at the calendar notification like it had betrayed me. How absurd, right? Getting mad at an app. But it felt symbolic somehow, like even the technology we shared hadn't been told she was done with me. I could have deleted it. Could have stayed home. Could have let the reservation expire like everything else between us. But something in me said no. Something fragile and furious. Maybe I needed to prove, to myself, to her ghost, to the universe, that I still existed. That I wasn't going to be erased as quietly as she wanted. So I showered. I shaved. I put on the same navy shirt she once said made me look less exhausted. The sleeves were tighter now, or maybe my arms had just gotten weaker from carrying around the weight of everything I didn't say. At exactly 7:20 p.m., I walked into Felix's Bistro. The hostess smiled without recognition. "Reservation?" "Merrick," I said. "For 2. She glanced down at the list. Nodded. "Right this way?" They hadn't canceled it. She hadn't canceled it. That was the part that cracked something inside me all over again. She had the time. She had 3 days. But she left the calendar untouched, like a sadistic monument to what could have been. I sat down alone at the candlelit table for 2. The server brought me water. I didn't order wine. I didn't want anything that reminded me of her. I didn't even open the menu. I just sat there, hands folded, heart thudding, throat dry, waiting for a version of her that would never walk through that door. Around me, Couples whispered and laughed and leaned in too close. The man at the next table kissed his wife's wrist before she even finished her sentence. A younger couple across from me held hands over dessert like they hadn't fought once in their entire lives. And there I was, sitting in a chair that was supposed to be hers, listening to silverware clink and strangers tell each other they're lucky, all while replaying every warning sign I ignored. I remembered the time she stayed late at work and said she didn't want me to pick her up because it's embarrassing when you baby me. Or the time she flinched, barely, but still, when I touched her lower back in the grocery store. I remembered how she stopped asking me how I slept, how she stopped wearing the necklace I gave her, how she started saying, "I'm just tired," the way someone says, "Don't ask." Maybe she really was tired. Tired of me. Tired of pretending. Or maybe, and this is the part that won't let me sleep, maybe she wanted me to find her at the bar. Maybe that wasn't an accident. Maybe it was the cleanest way for her to do the ugliest thing. Because nothing ever felt like an accident with Tolly. At 7:42, the server came back. "Would you like to order?" I stared at the seat across from me. "No," I said. "She's not coming." And I left a $50 tip for wasting their time. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight slicing through the blinds like it had no business being there. The apartment felt wrong in daylight. Too exposed, too empty, too loud in all the wrong places. The coffee maker sputtered like always, but the smell didn't comfort me. It just reminded me how many times I'd poured her cup first. Always hers first. She liked it with oat milk and 2 tiny drops of vanilla syrup. I hated that I still remembered. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but the area code was familiar. My stomach dropped before I even answered. It was her mother, June. A woman who still mailed handwritten Christmas cards, who called me sweetheart, even after arguments, who once said I was the best thing that ever happened to her daughter. Her voice sounded small, cracked, like she already knew everything but wanted me to say it out loud. "Merrick," she started, hesitant. "Did something happen between you and Tolly?" I froze. Part of me wanted to hang up right there. But my mouth betrayed me. "You should ask her that." She sighed. "She came by last night. Said she needed to stay a few days. She looked off. Said you two were taking space." There was a pause so long I could hear her swallow. She didn't mention another man. The words stabbed deeper than she realized. I could have told her. Could have exposed her perfect daughter's secret. Could have spat the truth like poison down the line. But I didn't. Because even now, even after everything, I couldn't bring myself to destroy the version of Tolly that her mother believed in. Instead, I said, "Yeah, just some space." It was pathetic, really, protecting someone who'd already shredded me into silence. But that's what love does, doesn't it? It makes fools defend their executioners. After the call, I sat there, staring at nothing. Then something strange happened. I went to the hall closet, the one with our old photo albums, and pulled out a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were stacks of Polaroids, movie tickets, postcards, the story of us in fragments. There was one photo that stopped me cold. Her at the pier, hair flying everywhere, eyes squinting into the sun. I'd taken it right before proposing. She looked happy, not pretending, not rehearsed, real. It made me wonder how long she'd been acting after that day. How many smiles were staged, how many touches performed for the sake of stability. And then, buried under the photos, I found an envelope. My name written in her handwriting, slightly smudged. I hadn't noticed it before. My heart started pounding. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter. 1 page. 1 sentence. "I'm sorry I couldn't be who you kept trying to love." That was it. No date. No explanation. No signature. Just that line, like she'd written it weeks ago and waited for me to find it when it would hurt the most. I sat there with that paper in my hand, realizing this wasn't just betrayal. It was calculation. She hadn't slipped away from me. She planned her disappearance like an artist sketching out her escape. I didn't leave the apartment that day. I couldn't. The world outside felt like a stage I'd been kicked off of, and everyone else was still performing. Inside, though, it was just me, the ghost of her perfume, and that single sentence bleeding through the paper like an old scar. "I'm sorry I couldn't be who you kept trying to love." I kept rereading it, like some part of me thought maybe there was a hidden code, a clue buried between the words that could explain why. But there wasn't. There never is. People who leave don't owe logic. They leave because it's easier than explaining themselves. By late afternoon, the silence was too heavy. I turned on the TV, muted it, then turned it off again. My reflection in the dark screen looked unfamiliar. Eyes sunken, jaw tight, wearing the same expression I used to have when I tried to hold her after an argument and she'd stiffen under my hands. That face had been my warning sign. I just never listened to it. Around 6, I opened her laptop. It was still on the desk, closed but not locked. I shouldn't have done it, I know that. But there's a point in heartbreak when self-respect starts losing its grip and curiosity becomes the only thing keeping you upright. I told myself I just wanted to look at our photos, maybe back them up before she asked for the rest of her things. But that wasn't what I found. There it was, an open draft in her email, one she never sent. It was addressed to him. No name, just a single letter and a period in the to field, like she'd saved his contact under something deliberately vague. The subject line read, "The ring." I felt my throat close. My finger hovered over the trackpad for a long time before I finally opened it. The message wasn't long, maybe 5 sentences, but it told me everything I hadn't been brave enough to imagine. He's been distant lately, but I think he suspects. I can't tell if I feel guilty or just tired of hiding. He doesn't deserve this, but I don't deserve to live half a life either. I'll tell him soon. I promise. No timestamp, no signature, just that quiet cruelty disguised as honesty. The worst part? She'd written that before I caught her at the bar. She'd already planned the confession, probably rehearsed it in her head, maybe even in the mirror. But when she saw me standing there, she froze, not out of shame, but out of relief. Because I had done her a favor. I had ended it for her. And the man? I finally noticed something else at the bottom of the screen, a text notification that had popped up before the computer locked itself again. Just one line, previewed from an unsaved number. He saw us. What now? I stared at it until the screen went black again. My reflection stared back, smaller, hollower, and quieter than I remembered. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just whispered the only truth left in me. She was already gone. I was just the last person to notice. It's been 3 months. The apartment looks different now. The couch is in a new corner. The walls are bare except for a framed photograph I took last week of the ocean at dawn. I never realized how loud the world gets at sunrise. The way the gulls scream, the water churns, the wind hums through empty docks like it's tuning an instrument. It's chaotic, but honest. And lately, I've come to value that more than anything. Tolly never came back. She sent a moving company to collect her things. She didn't call. No final message. Not even a request for closure. I thought that would break me. For a while it did. But here's what no one tells you. Silence can be a blessing once you learn how to stop fearing it. I went to therapy. Real therapy. Not podcasts. Not articles. A real human who sat across from me and didn't let me turn everything into a joke. The first time I told her the story, I cried so hard I couldn't finish. The second time, I was angry. The third time, I just felt tired. And somewhere between the 10th and 11th session, I stopped telling the story like it belonged to someone who had lost everything. Because I didn't. I lost someone who was never going to fight for me. I lost a version of love that asked me to shrink to fit inside it. I lost comfort, yes, but comfort isn't the same as peace. Peace came slowly, through small things. The sound of coffee brewing in a quiet kitchen. The weight of my own breath at night. A smile from the stranger at the bookstore when I bought a journal instead of texting her. Last week, I deleted her number. Not out of anger, out of forgiveness and freedom. And this morning, this quiet, sun-soaked morning, I finally did something I'd been avoiding. I went back to Bleeker's Tavern. The same bar. The same cracked vinyl booths. The same dusty jukebox that still only plays 3 songs. I sat at a table in the back, ordered nothing but water, and just existed. I looked around, not to find her, but to find myself in the memory, to reclaim it. And as I stood to leave, the bartender said, "Haven't seen you in a while. You look lighter." He was right, because I finally understood something. She didn't end me. She revealed me. She burned the old version of my life to the ground, and what's left now is ash, sure, but also space. And I'm finally learning how to build again. Not for her, not to prove anything, but for me. I still don't wear a ring, but for the first time in a long, long while, my hands feel free.